Hello and welcome back to the podcast. In today's episode, I am chatting with the lovely Michelle, who is taking us through her incredible motherhood journey, which started more than 20 years ago at a time when information wasn't as readily available as it is now, which effectively meant that Michelle could only rely on reading books, testimonials from family members or friends, and medical professional advice. So this is what shaped Michelle's pregnancy and postpartum education. In this episode, Michelle takes us through her 3 births, all hospital-based births, 2 in Australia, 1 in Malaysia. What is really interesting in this episode is the insight that Michelle gained with every one of her birth and how it led her to making different choices. And after those 3 births, Michelle thought that she was done having children. She was happy with having 3, but that changed when she met her now partner, and he was keen to have a child of his own. And luckily for them both, at the age of 43, Michelle got pregnant very quickly. And at the time of this recording, she's 37 weeks pregnant with her 4th child, first with her partner. And she takes us through how she's preparing for a very different birth this time and decided to opt out of hospital birth to go down a home birth pathway, and how she has learned a lot along the way, as she also trained to be a psychologist, so she could use a lot of those techniques that she has learned through her training and apply that in the birth space. And without further ado, I will leave you with Michelle's episode. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. You are listening to Kappa with a Doula. I'm your host, Alicia, exercise physiologist and doula. And every week I chat with a mom or mom-to-be about all things pregnancy, birth, and parenting. The stories you will hear in this podcast are real and sometimes raw, but they are all told without any taboo. So grab yourself a cuppa, put your earphones in, relax, and enjoy this episode. Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. So do you want to start by introducing yourself? So telling the listeners your name, where you're living, and who is in your family.
Yeah. So I'm Michelle. I am currently 37 weeks pregnant with baby number 4. And a really big gap between my first 3 and this one. So I have a 20-year-old daughter, a 17-year-old son, and a 13-year-old daughter. So this is number 4 for me, but number 1 for my partner, which is really exciting. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow.
And I'm from Sydney. I live in the Lower North Shore in Sydney.
Oh, amazing. And so I think, before I even start with my usual line of questioning, how did your kids react to them being, big sisters and a big brother to, a newborn baby, right?
That was interesting, actually, because I did have a lot of anxiety because I knew I was pregnant really early. I was maybe only a few weeks pregnant. So I held on to that until Christmas Day, which was 9 weeks pregnant.
So they reacted pretty positively, even though obviously
I was pretty worried about their reaction, but they were actually really good. I mean, my youngest didn't take it all too well, like initially, as she's always wanted to be the youngest and has made that very clear pretty much her whole life. But apart from that, I mean, she got over that pretty quickly. Yeah, look, she's wrapping her head around it, and but the other 2 are super excited. Yeah,
but I mean, when you're pregnant, obviously it's a transition for you, and you've got about 9 months to get used to it. It's transition for obviously the dad as well, but it's also a transition for the children, right? So it's a time they don't have to accept it straight away, and sometimes even 13, teenager, but it can still be quite difficult to accept, because obviously your daughter, she's going through
Yeah.
teenage life, and then
Yeah.
this, huge thing in her life is happening. Mum's having a baby, mum's, giving me a
Yeah.
sibling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
obviously that can be
she was
really
probably a bit
like,
like that. She
whoa,
was
okay,
more like,
this is a lot, but she's got 9 months to
she
adapt to
actually
it.
thought that, yeah, yeah. Well, she thought that meant no less love for her.
Oh
She's
yeah.
kind of always been a bit, I don't know, I guess it's deductive in that sense when it comes to love. She's always thought, oh, well, there's this much love and it gets divvied out,
Yeah. Yeah,
So it's
see.
been a bit of a lesson for her to go, no, it doesn't quite work that way. So
Yeah, that's interesting. That's it's really good that,
yeah,
the other two have taken it quite, positively, and then your
yeah,
last daughter is, well, she's adapting to it. So it's,
she
it's an
is.
ongoing
Yeah,
process anyway. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. So did you always want to be a mum? So you're obviously a mum to, almost 4 children now, but was it always on the cards for you?
yeah, I did actually. And I used to always say, even when I was quite young, I used to say things like, oh, well, if I don't meet anyone by the time I'm 28, I'll just do it myself.
I see.
But oddly enough, my best friend, when I did fall pregnant, because I was quite young when I fell pregnant, I was 23 when I fell pregnant, had my eldest at 24. Even when I fell pregnant, my best friend said to me, I don't know why you're having kids. You don't even like other people's kids. So I obviously wasn't that externally maternal, but I
Yeah.
had always wanted my own. So
Yeah. Yeah, but some people are
yeah,
like that. You don't, I feel like
yeah,
you don't have to, pour out love for other people's kids to want your own kids, right? You
yeah.
can just want your own, I guess,
Yeah, yeah. And look, and actually having babies probably increased my, I wouldn't say love, but increased my interest or
Yeah.
softened me when it came to other people's kids, So
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, beautiful.
yeah.
So you started into the journey. So you became a mom at 23. Was that a plan?
24,
Yeah.
24, yeah.
So
Yeah.
was that a planned conception back then?
No, I knew my husband at the time. We obviously were married. Then we knew each other we were together for 3 months before I fell pregnant with my eldest daughter.
Oh wow, okay.
So it was very quick and
Yeah.
very surprising. Yeah, not planned, but
Yeah.
lovely nonetheless. And
Yeah,
it
yeah.
worked quite well because it was a 19-year relationship. So we must have been doing something right. Yeah.
Wow. So had you, well, I guess you'd been together for 3 months. So had you started talking about kids back then?
Oh, I think he knew that I wanted kids, but it was
Yeah.
probably just like this is what I want in my life sort of
Okay.
conversation. Yeah. And then when I did fall pregnant, so he had older children himself. We had, at the time they were 10 and 15. They're older now. So yeah, at the time I kind of said to him, well, this is too much for you. I'll just do it on my own if you need me to. So yeah.
So you were a stepmom, or was the custody shared?
Yeah, no, it was kind of shit. Like it was every second
Okay.
weekend. Yeah, I only met the eldest daughter once, the 15-year-old. She didn't take their separation very well by the looks of it, but the son, was involved in our life quite a bit. Yeah.
So you became almost maternal before you had your own children, I guess, because when you're a step parent, you kind of involved in the education, even if if it's not your own, and obviously the kid has, a mom and a dad, you're still involved in the education and the upbringing of this child or those children's, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a difficult separation for him too anyway. So it was, I was definitely trying to find my feet and learn how to kind of understand what the best way was to be in that role at such a young age. I was still really quite young, right? So, I was still in party mode when I fell pregnant with Isabella. I actually think I remember being out drinking, thinking, God, I feel really sick tonight. And obviously because I was pregnant. So, yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah. Whoopsie days. Yeah.
When you found out and then you told your then husband, what was the conversation like? And I know you said, you were ready to just have this baby on your own if he didn't want it, didn't want to be involved, I should say. But so what was the conversation like for him? Because obviously it wasn't planned and he had 2 children of his own, and then there was going to be another child born soon.
I'd say probably quite difficult for him,
Yeah.
in that moment, and for me as well. Like again, I had no plans, obviously, to have a baby with someone I'd only known for 3 months at that
Yeah.
time. But I was kind of just in that headspace, going, well, I know that this is really difficult. It's difficult for both of us, but I would prefer to do it together, but if it's not going to work that way,
Yeah.
then yeah.
Yeah.
And so then we
Right.
decided to give it a go. So, and like I said,
Nice.
it must have done something right, because 19 years is a long time, right? So
Of course.
yeah,
Yeah. And you went on to have another, you had 3 children with
two
your
more.
husband. So,
Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah,
of course. Wow. So, how
yeah.
did you navigate pregnancy when, as you said, you're 23, you're really young, it wasn't on the radar just yet, and you probably
Mm,
don't know much about, well, what do I do once I'm pregnant, right?
yeah, probably good question. Um, Look, I think back then too, we talk about culturally, and I think it's probably getting even younger. That's considered really young now these days, but even back then was still quite young at 23, 24 to have a baby. I found it difficult in terms of, I kind of just went with what I knew about,
Hmm.
what you watch on TV. It was like, okay, well, I have to see a doctor now. And then so I went, saw a GP. I didn't have private health back then. It wasn't
Hmm.
something that you had to have. Remember, it was, not
Yeah.
part of Medicare and or your tax. And so I was kind of guided by the medical professionals in that sense. And I
Hmm.
went through the public system. And the only good thing about me is that I like to know everything about
Yeah.
everything. So if something's happening to me, like for me with pregnancy, I read every book you can ever imagine. So, I think it's probably dial up internet. It was dial up internet back then. So we didn't do a lot of online research, but I did read lots of books. So, and I do remember actually when I was in labour, and I know we'll get to that point, but I do remember being in labour and one of the midwives going, oh, she knows a lot. But that's because I read
Wow.
so much, but I didn't
Yeah.
find that people that were guiding me very helpful. It was mainly
Hmm.
the research that I had conducted to understand what was going on in my body rather than other people telling me. Yeah.
Wow, that's a really good point you make because 20 years ago was 2003, and you wouldn't have had all the resources we have now, like, podcasts
No,
and YouTube and birth stories and birth videos and courses
no.
and whatsoever. You would have had books, and
Yep.
that's about it.
Yep.
And
That's it.
even then, it would have been restricted, obviously.
Well, it's that, it's kind of the outdated, and it was probably outdated then, what to expect when you're
Yeah,
expecting.
yeah.
I think Up the Duff came out that year as
Mm,
well. So
hmm.
that's been around for a while. That was a
Yeah,
nice kind of twist to the pregnancy
yeah,
information that I quite like. Yeah, it was just, what you could get your hands on, I guess. And
yeah,
people that you met, but at my age, I wasn't meeting people that were pregnant. I didn't know
yeah.
anyone who'd had
Hmm.
babies. So,
Mm,
yeah.
mhm. What about in your family circle? Like, what about your mum? Could you rely on her experience of birth and maybe aunties and other close family members to, I guess, kind of guide you through?
Well, sort of. I mean, I was in Perth at the time, and
Yeah.
mum was in Sydney.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, look,
Yeah.
we would have conversations. I was
Yeah.
also a little bit stubborn at that age too. I was a bit like, I moved out very early. I moved out at
Yeah.
16. So a lot of my life I was living my way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I didn't really, because I left home so early, I didn't really, I guess, develop a habit of turning to mum for that
Yeah.
type of advice. Not back then. It's changed a lot now, our
Mm.
relationship and the way, you kind of interact with your mum. But yeah, like, yeah, I had mum there. She was always been really supportive, but different states. But
Yeah.
no one else really that I could go, oh, hey,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
happening here, or
Mm.
yeah.
What options did you have for birth? It sounds like you basically were kind of guided towards the public health system, and it was kind of like, well, you'll get. Did you have an option for continuity of care, or did you just see a midwife that was,
No,
on call then?
no, there was nothing like that. I don't even think that even
Right.
existed. Yeah,
Wow.
it was public hospital because you
Yeah.
don't have private health. You go into public, and you would wait for sometimes a couple of hours during your appointment time, and you get whatever midwife
Hmm.
that you got, or obstetrician. Sometimes you saw the obstetrician, but you'd get whoever was on duty that day. So,
Yep.
and I think I saw someone new every appointment. There was no
Right.
shared care then either with
Okay.
the GP. It was just the hospital. Not that I know of, or not that I was given
Yeah.
the choice. It was just, this is what you do. Yeah.
Mm.
This is what's happening. And then when you are having contractions, you call us and
Okay.
we'll let you know whether to come in or not. Yeah.
It sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Lucky you did your research. That would
I
have
know.
given you, yeah. It all sounds like obviously you've got limited access to research. You don't know anyone who's pregnant who's gone through what you're going through, and so how did you feel about this upcoming birth? Did you feel like you had all the information that you needed? Did you feel like you kind of knew what you were walking into, or did you just go, well, I'll see when I'm in it, basically?
Yeah, I probably didn't know what I was in for, but I was still really excited. Like,
Yeah,
it was
good,
something that excited me. Like, I wasn't daunted by it. I wasn't
good.
anxious or anything. It was more, I can't wait to see what happens, you know?
Okay,
So,
that's good.
which is good. And it's probably personality driven as well. It
Yeah.
was, yeah, I don't know. I think I just I
Mm.
just trusted in the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I guess in hindsight, if I think about that, that also probably contributed to the experience that I'd had during labour as well. I didn't ask any
Mm-hmm.
questions. I didn't know whether to question anything,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there was probably positives and negatives to that.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so, well, take us through the birth of your first daughter. Then, what was it? A spontaneous labor, or did you get
Yeah,
an induction?
spontaneous labour. No,
Nice.
spontaneous labour with Isabella. So it was in the evening. I think I remember going, oh, actually, I think this is it.
Okay.
We timed the contractions and
Yeah.
they weren't intense, but they were regular.
Yeah.
And I think I remember the hospital saying, oh, when you're 5 minutes apart, come in, I
Okay.
think, or call us and come in. So I
Mm.
timed it and it was fine. They were 5 minutes apart, but I was like, they were tolerable. But I called them and they said, come in. And so
Mm-hmm.
I went in. I think that might have been around midnight, actually. Yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night going, I'm uncomfortable. This is
Yeah.
happening. Went in and they did an internal.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I didn't know whether to question it. She was like, we're
Yeah.
just going to check. I was like, okay.
Oh.
And she said, oh, you're 4 centimeters already. And I was like, really? Like, I'd
Nice.
read enough to go, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, I'm not feeling this at all.
Yeah.
This is okay. Um, so they decided to admit me, obviously, because 4 centimeters is
Yeah.
not too bad. And then I think it was maybe about 6 hours and nothing was happening. So
Okay.
I think contractions had stalled a little bit. I was doing lots of walking. They did another internal and said, oh, actually, you're more like 2 centimeters, not 4.
Oh. Oh.
Um,
Okay.
we'll just break your waters.
Oh.
But in hindsight, again, I wish that I should have just really been sent home, to
Mm-hmm.
go, hey, when they become intense, you can't talk through your contractions,
Mm.
come back in.
Yeah.
But they kept me there and broke my waters. And then
Mm.
another 6 hours later, no progress. So I was there for
Mm.
12 hours with, and after they break your waters, or for me anyway, the contractions were really quite intense by
Yeah.
that stage. And so it was 6 hours of really intense contractions. And then, the language was, oh, you're still only 2 centimeters.
Mm. Yeah.
You've not progressed. We know now that all this language is not very nice. And so, and I just had enough. I had been up obviously from midnight. It
Mm.
was 12 hours, no progress at all. We didn't know how long it was going to be. They'd already
Mm.
broken my waters, so they weren't going to send me home. So I opted for an epidural so they could
Mm.
put me on a drip. It still took 12 hours before I was fully dilated to have Isabella. So she just really wasn't ready to come out.
Mm.
And I think if they had just accurately measured the first time
Mm. Yeah.
and sent me home, I reckon I could have been like that for a couple of days. So really quite forced to
Mm.
come out. I went
Yeah.
through 4 midwife shifts over 24 hours. And the last midwife I had was just a horrible, horrible woman who just made me feel awful.
Oh.
So it was not nice to have
Yeah.
her be the one to help deliver Isabella. Oh, and also I forgot to mention too, throughout all this, they had medical students
Oh.
coming
Yep.
through, and I'd agreed. So I'd had male medical student, I'd get an internal by the midwife and then he would do an internal.
Oh,
to see what that felt like,
gosh.
as a medical student. Look, I agree, I had agreed to it, but
Mm-hmm.
again, now in hindsight, I'm like, wow, no wonder I wasn't progressing. I've got this stranger inside me, another stranger inside me,
Yeah.
bright lights,
Mm.
getting told that I wasn't progressing. Like, of course, now that I know what I know,
Mm. Yeah.
of course, this was a really long, stressful labor,
But I mean,
you
like,
know.
I know you said you'd agreed to it, but your
Mm,
and again, you didn't know what you didn't know back then, but your
no.
consent to having medical students can be withdrawn at any point. Just because you
Yes.
said yes doesn't mean
Yeah.
when you're in it you have to go, oh well, I said yes. No, you can say no at this point. You can say, actually, you know what? No,
Yeah.
everyone, walk out of the
Yeah.
room, please.
But the thing was, I think
Yeah,
back then I was so young and naive and
yeah,
didn't have a lot of information that I don't recall being bothered by it. But I
yeah,
also was probably never given the option. I was kind of, like I said, just going with the flow of everything
yeah,
and
yeah.
just doing what everyone was telling me I should be doing. Oh, you're not
Mm,
progressing. We need to break your waters. Oh,
mm,
okay. Oh,
yeah,
you're still not progressing. Would you like an epidural?
yeah.
Oh,
That's
okay.
right.
Like, so you kind of just, I don't remember being distressed by it
Yeah, yeah.
until obviously after. So eventually I was actually throughout the last kind of 6 hours of being on the drip, 12 hours, took 12 hours to get fully dilated.
Mhm.
She was in distress.
Oh,
They did where they take the blood from her scalp. They did that
yep.
twice
Mhm.
and said, oh, look, it's fine. We'll get you pushing. So I think from memory, I didn't push for very long. It was like
Mhm.
25 minutes, even on an
Yep.
epidural. So, but when she came out and they put her on my chest, she wasn't breathing. And I was like, oh, is this normal? And then the next thing is they whipped her off my chest and
Mhm.
all these doctors and midwives came running in and they were
Yep.
resussing her for 5 minutes.
Oh,
And
wow.
I didn't actually know that she was being resussed. I read that on
Oh,
her chart a
wow.
week later. Yeah. So they weren't telling me anything. She's getting resussed over there. The lady's going, oh, just, hey, we're just going to sort the placenta. I don't even remember getting
Mm.
asked for consent for the
Mm.
injection for the placenta delivery. I think they just did it. Maybe it wasn't a consent thing then. I have no idea.
Mm.
I think I remember this midwife saying to me, because at the time was there for 24 hours. I had I had stripped my clothes off. I was going to put my clothes on.
Mm.
And she'd said something to me like, put your dignity gown on and put
Oh,
the gown over me. So, it was just
gosh.
a
Wow.
bizarre experience at the end.
Yeah.
And then they resussed her, but they didn't bring her back to me. They stuck her under a heat lamp, put all the lights on, and
Mhm.
left me in the birthing suite with Isabella, 3-5 meters away from me, lights on for over an
Mhm.
hour and a half while this horrible midwife was like cleaning up around me. It was just bizarre. It was just, yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Wow.
not kind of what I had envisaged. And
Mhm.
then Isabella, unfortunately, was tested positive for Group B strep infection, but we didn't know that until kind of day 2. Yeah, so, and then she was in neonatal for a week and we got sent home and would
Oh,
have to
wow.
come and visit. And yeah, it was just, yeah, not a nice experience.
No, and that's a really rough start to motherhood. And again, you don't know what you don't know, and so
Mm,
and that's your first experience is your
yeah,
baby is whipped away, and then you're not even told what's happening, and then your baby's put on the heat lamp, but still not near you, like really far away from you in the room, and
yeah.
then it goes to neonatal, and you're discharged, and wow, that's
Mm,
just really
mm.
rough. Wow.
And I
How?
didn't even no one explained what GBS was to me.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Mhm.
so all I knew was that she had an infection and that she was really unwell and she
Mhm.
had to be in neonatal. And so it wasn't until I think I was visiting to feed in the
Mhm.
morning and I pulled up her chart from the top front of the bassinet and read it and was
Mhm.
reading, or resussed for 5 minutes, but no one explained anything to me. They were just, she's in neonatal until she gets better. I had no idea what GBS was. No idea. Yeah. So they just said, she's got GBS, we're taking her to neonatal. So, and my first breastfeed, like they didn't show me how to breastfeed. I kind of just taught myself. And I
Oh.
remember going to neonatal
Mm.
to do a breastfeed and I was so cracked. My nipples were
Mm.
so they were bleeding. I was in so much pain that I started crying, and I said to the midwife, please, can you just give her some formula? I can't do this today. And she told me off. And said, no, just breastfeed.
Wow.
And I remember another really lovely lady, she obviously could see I was just not coping, came and took her off me and said, go and sleep. I will feed her. And then brought her up to me and showed me how to bath her and get her to latch on. But if I hadn't been in distress in that moment, I probably wouldn't have gotten any help. Kind of just left to fumble your way through it all.
And see, that's really sad that you, as you said, you had to be at the breaking point to get help.
Yeah.
It wasn't offered to you before. Who knows why? Who knows if it was the system back then? Or did you at any point during your pregnancy, did you feel like you were being judged for being, 23 or, 24 at birth? Did you feel judged?
Oh, no, I don't know. I think I just kind of I just noticed that I'd have, like, if I had called to ask if I could take Panadol, for instance, because I was always really worried about what I could or couldn't take. I was very vigilant about what I could eat, what I couldn't eat. You'd occasionally get a midwife who would talk to you in a condescending manner, like you were a little girl, So I definitely felt that a lot of the time. Not so much judgment. I guess maybe in hindsight it probably was judgment, but to me it kind of felt like, I just always felt like this child that was having a baby. The way I was getting spoken to. And for someone like me who had moved out so early in life and had been really independent and self-sufficient, it was really kind of offensive for me to be spoken to like that, so.
Of course. Wow. Yeah, who knows, if back then they didn't tell you anything because that's what they did with everyone, or whether it's because, she's 24, she's not going to understand anyway, which obviously very wrong. And, as you said, age is not a reflection of your ability to understand and to go through a pregnancy and have a baby. As you said, you moved out really early, you were independent, you were an adult at 24, obviously. You knew what you were doing. There's just no need to be condescending to someone who they believe is young.
And I think it might have not just been me necessarily. Like, I think also too, that particular hospital, that public hospital, they would get a lot of lower socioeconomic status teenage mums come through. And I guess the public system is a bit like that, but that particular hospital dealt with a lot of young teenage girls having babies, and so they may have just been in this habit of treating people like this, because that's what they dealt with a lot of the time. That was, I guess it's, now that I'm a psychologist and now that I know a lot about this kind of stuff, I guess they would kind of just developed apathy, and maybe as a way to protect themselves, because it would probably be quite hard to see, some disadvantaged young girls coming through and having babies, as a way to protect themselves. They got kind of hardened to it.
Wow. So how did you navigate motherhood once Isabella was discharged from neonatal and, it was, you, your husband and, his two kids, and then this new baby who, was still in hospital for a week while you were at home and so on. How was that, being reunited?
It was really lovely. I mean, for me, I can remember putting her in the car, in the capsule, thinking, gosh, it's like she's always been here, which is really nice. So it's funny how they just slot in, right? Yeah, look, I embraced it. I loved having her. Like, I would spend, she'd fall asleep on my chest. I didn't care. She'd, she's number one, right? The first child. So you can spend that time, I find, much more easily. Yeah, look, it was really great, really fulfilling. She was she was born just so easygoing and laid back. I thought, wow, this is pretty good. She woke up once in the middle of the night from birth, slept through from 6 weeks, was super chill. So, obviously she made life easy. It wasn't me. It was all her. The only hard thing was, but again, I guess because I was so independent and I left home so early, was that I was in Perth and I had nobody in Perth. I'm from Sydney, so I had no family around. Mum would obviously come visit, but that's it. Hadn't really made any friends because I wasn't there for very long until Mother's Group. And I've got friends from that Mother's Group to this day who are still they've flown over to Sydney and surprised me for my 40th. So it was probably some of the strongest friendships I've made was from Isabella's Mother's Group. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice.
Which is really great.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, see, I'm glad this next, chapter of being home went, as smoothly as it can with a newborn. Obviously, it comes with its challenges, but as long as you feel good, and as you said, you were fulfilled, and you were just, embracing it, and just bathing in that bubble of this is what a newborn is like, and we know that that part goes really quick, so you need to really embrace it, because then they become more awake, and then they don't sleep on your chest anymore, and so on.
That's right. I think she was in our room until about 8 months, and I remember her like at 8 months you could tell that she'd clicked that I was right next to her, so she started waking up going, well, why am I in this cot? Like I should be on Mum's chest. So that's when we moved her into the bedroom and learned how to do to teach her to sleep on her own. I mean, I would probably do things very differently now, but that was the information that we had then, was you need to teach them to self-soothe and all of that, the controlled crying stuff, and you just kind of do what you get told to do.
Exactly. And I mean, problem is, again, you had such limited access to information, and if the health professional you see, like the maternal child and health nurse, if that's the recommendation they're giving you, well, that's what you're going to follow, because you're told by a health professional to do this to help you. So there you go. So you just do it, right? And you don't question it. So
and I know I say back then a lot, I know it's only 20 years, but things have really, really changed in 20 years. Like, crazy amount.
No, things, I'm sure, well, I mean, I don't have the same, obviously, insight as you, but no, I'm sure things would have changed drastically in 20 years. And just the access to information, that now that you're pregnant with your fourth, you've got access to, a lot more than you did back with Isabella, obviously.
So, there's so much information. You can get actually a bit consumed by it, so
that's really interesting. And so was it 3 years later you had your son? Is that right?
Yeah, so 3 years, 3 months. I had 2 miscarriages in between that. Which wasn't the best experience. I mean, no miscarriages, I'm sure. So one miscarriage in about 7 weeks, and that I had private health by this stage, and I was seeing a private doctor in Perth, and I remember waking up bleeding on the Saturday, ringing up the doctor, going, oh, hey, I'm bleeding. What do I do? Should I go to emergency? And she said, oh no, don't take up emergency beds.
Oh gosh.
If you miscarry, we can't do anything about it anyway. And so I woke up the next day, and that was that. And I actually had, because I'm an O negative, I actually had to call them up and go, oh, hey, I'm an O negative. Should I be getting an anti-D? Now that I'm not the health professional, so I had no idea about anti-D until I had my first baby. And I remember getting roused on by her, like, why didn't you tell us this earlier? I'm like, but you know this, it's in my file.
Gosh.
And then 2 weeks later, falling pregnant again. And then that was a miscarriage. And I think even before that, I remembered I was at the doctor after everything had happened, and I actually told her off. I just said, look, you might see this every day. I don't go through this every day. The way this was managed is not okay. So the next time when she did a scan, look, I had a feeling things weren't okay, but she did a scan, and she looked very nervous because she knew there's obviously no heart rate, but I had already basically warned her, learn how to be empathetic if this was to happen again. And so she was struggling a little bit with that. So, but then, and then fell pregnant with Cooper. I don't know how much longer after that, maybe 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, my husband at the time was living in India. So he was flying back every 3 months and staying for 10 days.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think it was the end of maybe the first 3 month cycle. So yeah, it might have been about 3 or 4 months after I fell pregnant with Cooper. And then when I was 7 weeks pregnant, we moved. Oh no, it was 6 months later because we moved to Malaysia
Wow.
yeah, at night after he'd been living away for 9 months. So yeah, so we moved to Malaysia, and I had Cooper in Malaysia, and that was
did
amazing.
you? Wow.
Yeah.
That is absolutely insane. Wow.
Yeah.
How was that? How was going
the
through
level of care
Wow.
is just amazing compared to what you get here. So I bled at 8 weeks or something while I was over in Malaysia because we just moved over. I started to bleed. I went to the hospital, and my doctor had left for the day and got the phone call, turned his car around, came back. You'd never get that here. You'd never get that here. Did a scan, admitted me into hospital for a day, gave me some hormone injections. He said, look, yeah, you are. We don't know why. Let's give you some progesterone and just see if we can stabilize it. And he in my mind, he saved Cooper. He probably would not have been here if he hadn't done that. So, yeah, really chalk and cheese what you get here compared to overseas.
Wow. So did you have a midwife, or did you have obstetrician?
Obstetrician the whole time. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You see them quite often, and they do scans every single appointment. I mean, back then I was like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
As we're doing more research about multiple scans, probably not the best, but he's okay. So, and not finding out the sex, which I didn't want to know with Cooper, was unusual in Malaysia. Everyone wants to know. So I kept having to remind him, don't tell me what it is. Yeah. He was brilliant. That was probably the best birthing experience I've had is with Cooper. Yeah, they were great. The midwives after are really nurturing. They show you how to do things. I didn't know how to deal with a boy, so he would pee all over himself and all over the bassinet when I'd take the nappy off. I was like, what's going on here? So they would come and show me, put something over the top so he's not weeing all over the place. Yeah.
That's amazing. And
it was great.
I've been to Malaysia, holiday, right? But I know of the Indonesian Malaysian culture, and they're just so mother oriented. Like they know that, what we call having a village, and having people around to help the mother, to help the transition postpartum. They've got that sorted. They just
they're
to
amazing.
them that's normal.
So great.
That's culture, right? You just when you've got a mum to be, well, she needs help. She needs knowledge. She needs meals. She needs to not be on her feet. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit maybe too much, but they've just got that sense of, let's surround her with help, with knowledge, with nurturing. They've just got that. That would have been amazing to birth in Malaysia.
They were great. I discovered a pregnancy massage place too, not far from my place. Beautiful place. And then it was like something like, I don't think it was much at all. It was like $200 to have her come every day for a week after I gave birth to massage me and wrap my tummy up in this herbal kind of girdle thing and just pamper you. And it's like you just don't get that. I mean, if you did, could you imagine how expensive that would be? Having someone come give you a massage and pamper you for a week. So
no, that's right.
It was really, really lovely experience. He was 2 weeks early. It was pretty, I went in too early. He had done a sweep and I said yes. I was impatient. I said yes. Again, I didn't know the stuff that I know now, but like, yep, I would love to go now. That's great because I was 38 weeks. I did go that night. Labour stopped when I got into hospital, as we know it does. They just put me to sleep. They just said, look, have a sleep. They put me in at the suite for the night. And then the next day, it started like a little bit, but they broke my waters and got it going. And 7.5 hour labour, I did end up having an epidural at about 7 centimetres. It was just stock standard to me. It was like 7.5 hours compared to 24 hours. I was happy I didn't get. They left you alone. Like, I think I very rarely saw anyone stick their head in the birthing suite. It was just me and my husband at the time until it was time to push. Yeah. Very, like, they just, and I thought I was being, back then, I thought they were just not being attentive. And now, you know, it's like, well, that would be a dream come true if people would just leave you alone during labour. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so obviously Cooper was born healthy and didn't need resuscitation and so on, right?
No, he was perfectly healthy, really great. You know, I don't have particularly big babies. Isabella was 3.3 kilos. Cooper was 3.079 or something. So healthy for 38 weeks, I guess. The polar opposites of Isabella's labour to Cooper's labour. Yeah, very different. Yeah.
And so when did you come back to Australia after Cooper was born?
We actually moved to Dubai when he was 10 months old. Yeah, and lived there for 3 years. Planned to have no more children.
Yeah.
Although I was still a bit itchy, you know. I was like, I know we agreed that if we had a boy and a girl that we wouldn't go again. So my husband at the time was 16 years older than me. So for him, and understandably, he was like, I'm done, you know. And then we were using the old-fashioned withdrawal method, which was reliable for about 3.5 years, and then it wasn't reliable. So, it's not bad. So Scarlett wasn't planned, but I felt really happy that I felt like, okay, I always felt like I wanted another, like a third.
Yeah. Okay.
And the minute I had her or felt pregnant with her, I was like, yep, okay, I'm done now. This is it. Yeah. So that was really lovely. And actually I moved back to Australia when I was 32 weeks pregnant with Scarlett. So almost had her there. My husband at the time had a work opportunity come back up at Perth, back in Perth, that was good money. And we kind of went, my limit to fly is 32 weeks.
Okay.
We'll go back. But the care there is also amazing. You know, the care that I got up to 32 weeks is pretty wild.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, the fact that you're able to compare basically 3 different health systems, you know, in 3 different countries. Well, you didn't birth in Dubai, but I mean, you can compare the antenatal care. That would be so interesting. Dubai is, again, nurturing. They want to nurture mothers, and what they're also like technologically so, you know, ahead of their time, really
advanced.
Wow.
Interesting. She was great. She was really good. And then I birthed Scarlett. We had private health insurance when we got back to Perth, so I birthed in the private system back in Australia. So different to the public system. And I actually had a really amazing obstetrician. Yeah. He was recommended to me just after my first miscarriage and just before the second, because I was just so unhappy after the second, because I was so unhappy with that doctor that I'd had. And he was kind of had a reputation in Perth as being the best for unstable or complicated pregnancies. So because I had consulted with him once after the second loss, I was on the books. So when I came back at 32 weeks, he took me on. But she actually ended up being induced. And the reason for that is not because of him being it was kind of because he was on holiday. He did an internal at 39 weeks on the dot. Said, look, you're 1 centimetre. You could stay like that for a week, but I'm not sure. I go away this weekend. If you go into labour this weekend, you're going to have the doctor that you had for your losses. Yeah. She will be the one on duty. And I was like, no, I can't have her. Yeah. So I was like, yep. So that was the reason why. He was like, you can wait if you want to wait, but just letting you know that if you do go on the weekend, this is what's going to happen. I just refused to have her birth my baby. I'm sure she didn't want to either. So I said yes to being induced for Scarlett. Yeah.
And so, sorry, just want to take a little step back. So between your first birth and then your second and then now your third, so now there's been what, 6 years since your first girl was born. How much?
Seven.
How much more information is available, and at this point, is
Mm.
that changing the way you're thinking about birth, or are you reflecting on your other birth and going, oh, I'd like to do it a little bit differently, or I'd like to, not do that or try this, or how is that going?
Yeah, also a really good question. I think I still kind of just entrusted myself
Yeah.
to the professionals, but
Hmm.
because I was getting such a different level of care
Yeah.
in Malaysia and Dubai, that I felt like I had a lot more trust
Hmm.
in what they were saying to me and suggesting that I didn't feel like I needed to do too much extra research.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, this is so different than what I experienced the first time, and this feels so much better that I trust them. So
Yeah. Hmm.
I probably didn't ask questions, probably didn't question anything that they had said. I definitely went through all three births going, I'll just do what you tell me to do.
Yeah.
Happy to do what you say.
Yeah, yeah, and that's fine. I just wanted to ask that question, but yeah,
Yeah.
we know that there is this, I want to say, stigma, or this cultural thing, that we know that the hospital is safe. We know that listening to your
Mm.
health professional makes sense, and they know better, and they've done training and so on. Up until I think recently, that's what women believed, and then men
Yeah.
obviously. But I think now is when we're starting to, I guess, open up to different options and go, well, actually, I know the doctors have done extensive training and they know a lot, yes, but they don't know my body
Don't know
because they're
everything.
not
Yeah.
in my body. And
Yeah.
sometimes what they say can be questioned as well,
Yep.
in a respectful manner, obviously, but it doesn't have to be taken for granted. Interesting
Yeah.
to see, that nowadays, we have, obviously, again, it comes with the myriad of information that we have access to now, that we can question things and we can decline
Mm.
things and we can ask further explanations.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think where I find it really upsetting, and I suppose back then, again, I was quite privileged to have great care, or I felt comfortable with
Yeah.
the care that I had in Malaysia and
Hmm.
Dubai, and even with this obstetrician in Perth as well. Although, now that I know what I know, I probably wouldn't have said yes to an induction or a
Yeah.
sweep or an internal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I was comfortable back then. What makes me sad is that, there are women back then, and even now, not even back
Yeah.
then, but
Yeah.
now, who are not comfortable and don't know that they can actually
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm not okay with this, or
Yeah.
not actually understand that sometimes the agenda isn't
Mhm.
about you and what's best
Yeah.
for you and baby.
No,
It's about
that's right.
what's best for them or the hospital or timing or,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, when we start talking about inductions, right? I mean, when they schedule you in for an induction, as they say, they put you in a schedule. So therefore it's on their time.
Yeah.
It's when it suits for them. It's not when it
Yeah.
suits
This needs
you
to
that
work for us. Yeah.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
obviously there needs to be staffing and so on. We understand that, but they're still scheduling you in. It's like an appointment. It's on their
Well, that's
terms,
what
really.
happened with Isabella, I'm sure of it. They didn't send me home because they had already done paperwork and did
Hmm.
an internal and didn't want to send me home and have to do it again. Really, if I think about it,
So therefore,
and
so
then,
you get.
in my mind, she wouldn't have been born in meconium because she's born in meconium. That's why she wasn't breathing. She wouldn't have been
Yeah.
born in meconium because she wouldn't have been stressed because she wouldn't be in
Yeah.
a 24-hour induced labour. And there may have been some I don't even know if I got screened for GBS at the time. Not that it really matters. We know through research now that it's
Yeah.
not, we don't know. It may not have even been preventable anyway. But
Yeah.
like it was just this, what we know now, the cascade of intervention and what that does.
Exactly.
Isabella, in my mind, is a classic example of the negative consequences of that cascade, because they didn't want to, they've not obviously not said, but they didn't want to do the extra work,
Yeah.
to send me
Mm,
home and then bring me back.
that's right. And it's interesting, that you've got the insight with, 3 births under your belt and one coming up, that you can kind of go, yeah, this happened with Isabella and this didn't happen with Cooper. And this is how Cooper's birth went. And then this
Yeah,
happened with Scarlett and this is how, it unfolded. And as you said, at the
yeah.
time, when you don't have that step back perspective, well, you can't put it all together,
Oh, you
right?
just,
And go,
no.
well, yeah. But now you do, obviously. So with Scarlett, so you got a stretch and sweep, is that right?
Yeah, got a sweep. Well, it basically says you're 1 centimetre if you go
Yeah.
into labour this weekend. So I said, oh, well, let's do a sweep. I asked
Yeah.
for it because I said I would like to try and go into spontaneous labour rather than be induced. I did struggle with the idea of having her birthday being dictated, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
So I did ask for a sweep because I had hoped that I might go into labour before the induction, but that didn't happen. So I went in but I was very like, hey, I want to try and do this without any epidural or any drugs. Can you please make sure that you just do like 1 drop every 2 hours of the drip? And he did what I asked. He didn't speed things up. It was 7.5 hours. Again, he kind of let me birth my way the best I could.
Good.
Being induced, which was great. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so I did get 8 centimetres. I actually got to transition. I went through transition, which I only just knew what that was now, this pregnancy. And no one told me this stuff back then.
Oh, wow.
With my other babies. I did get to transition where I remembered my mind just breaking. And I'd learned, I wasn't a psychologist then, but I had learned from the 2 previous labours. I remember telling myself that it's a mental game, Michelle. You need to stay mentally strong to get through this. So I do remember getting to transition and just my brain cracking, my mind cracking, and saying to them, I can't do this anymore. And they did try, and I think you can, let's try gas, but I had cracked. I was like, get that out of my face. I was like, I was done, so I think that they were like, oh, we're not going to be able to distract her. But if I had known what transition was what that meant, I may have made it through. But so got an epidural at 8 centimetres and had her maybe not even an hour later. So, but again, I'm pretty proud of myself for getting to that point.
Of course.
After being induced, where the contractions are so erratic when you're induced, so you have one okay one, and you have an awful one, and then you have one on top of each other, and they're kind of all over the place,
Yeah, no, that's right. And I mean, look, I know you had said, early on in that labor, like, I don't want drugs or anything. You made it to 8 centimeters. You've done like 95% of the work without any drugs. And it doesn't, and we know that sometimes, that last, 2 centimeters or so on can be really hard, especially because, the mum is tired. As you said, the transition is a really hard time. And if you don't have the tools, or if your birth partner doesn't have the tools, or you don't have support, it's really hard to get through that. You're in like contraction mode, you're in labor, you're exhausted. Sometimes it's hard to remind yourself that this is transition and you can do it and it's okay and you're going to be fine. It's a bit much at this point. So doing it to 8 centimeters, that's mind-blowing. That is really good, especially when you said it's an induction. It's not spontaneous natural contractions, it's induced contractions, and they are more painful, more erratic. It's not easy at all. That's good on you. That's you've
and now
done.
Endorphins aren't working like they are in spontaneous labor. It's like, and again, I didn't know any of this though. You kind of just go, it's only been this actual pregnancy where I've reflected on that birth and gone, you know what, I actually did okay considering I had no information. Whereas before I would kind of beat myself up or go, oh, I got to 8 centimeters and then I cracked,
Yeah, so, and see, like, in something, I think that's what I was trying to say, but I kind of lost my train of thought. I don't want to demonize drugs. Like, drugs have a time and a place, and sometimes you need them so you can have a rest, because it is hard work. It's like running a marathon. And you don't actually know when the end is. You don't actually see the finish line, right? You have no idea. And you're just told, keep running. Yeah, so, it's not about demonizing drug and saying, oh, I made it to 8.
No, of course not.
And then I needed, and then I cracked. It's like, no, you did amazing. And even if you had gotten the epidural at 3 centimeters, awesome, because laboring is hard, regardless of whether you have the drugs or not. And sometimes the drugs, they don't help you anyway. So
No, and you know what?
it doesn't matter.
I was in a hospital. I was in a hospital, so that you're in that environment where the
Yep.
expectation, not the expectation, but I guess the accessibility is there, right? So you're
Yep.
going to kind of go, well, okay, well,
Yep.
I'm going to do this because at the moment this is really hard. Yeah,
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 exactly. And we
yeah,
know environment is everything. And you started your labor not at home. You started it in, the bright light environment, the, stainless steel, the tiles, the everything
yeah,
that just
yeah,
stalls a labor. We know that when we walk into a hospital, for most of us, it stalls our labor. You
yeah,
started there. That's
yeah,
not easy to get
yeah,
the oxytocin flowing, to get comfortable, if you can say that,
yeah,
comfortable, safe,
yeah,
and
yeah,
feeling,
yeah,
feeling good.
yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't even happen. You don't. Who feels
No.
comfortable birthing in a hospital when usually comfortable is home. Comfortable is not
Yeah,
hospital.
and no rhythm, no flow. It's kind of
Yeah.
all over the place. So yeah,
So
yeah.
how was Scarlett's birth? She was born no problem. She was a healthy, happy baby.
She was she was initially healthy, very unhappy to be born. I think she
Oh,
was definitely forced out. She came out screaming. I remember her being very different from the
wow.
other two. I was like, "Whoa, you were not happy being pushed out today." But she was covered in Vernix, like really thick white. I was like, "Oh, this baby was pretty happy where she
Yeah.
was,"
Okay.
and fed immediately, but then didn't latch too well
Okay.
and was fed for 2 hours after she was born and wouldn't get off. So if I took her off, she would cry. And I remember calling the nurses going, "Can you just please take her? I'm going to lose my mind. I've been up for 32 hours." And I remember them rousing on me, if you keep feeding like that, your milk's gonna come in. I'm like, well, this is why I'm calling you. She won't come off. She's crying, she's screaming unless I give her my boob, and I've got
Yeah.
no milk. So I said, I just want a few hours sleep. Can you please
Yeah.
just take her, just so I can get refreshed and not stressed?
Mm.
And they came back 3 hours later and apologized,
Mm.
said actually she just guzzled a whole heap of formula, which is probably a bit naughty to give her, but I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't do
Yeah.
this all day, all night after just
Mm.
having her. And they said actually she stopped breathing, and so they've got to monitor her because she had what I still don't really know what they are. She said that she was getting duskies,
Okay.
so her heart rhythm would go weird and she
Mm.
would turn grey or even black,
Oh,
and she
wow.
had to be resuscitated at one stage too. So they had to put her in the neonatal for about 5 days and monitor her as well. So,
Oh,
but
wow.
they kept me at the hospital. So this is private. So because they don't need the bed, public, they
Yep.
kick you out. With the
Yep.
private, they were like, well, no, you stay as long as she's here. So,
Okay.
and she ended up being fine.
Okay.
They tested her heart and she was fine, but never really fed properly. And actually, all of them, I didn't really like. They were losing weight. I've had several surgeries to correct dodgy implants, so
Mm-hmm.
I've got quite a lot of nerve damage and scar tissue. So my milk comes in and then drops off, and they
Oh,
just
wow.
don't get enough. So for all of them,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, I had to stop feeding at around 3 months because they were losing too much weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she was good. She was, apart from that, totally fine. Yeah.
So now you've got two girls, one boy, and you're done.
Yeah.
There you go. 3 children, all done.
Yeah. That's what I said.
That's what you said. Obviously, the story
Yeah.
doesn't end there.
Yeah. 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 My husband and I separated just about 2 years ago now, actually, just over 2 years
Mhm.
ago, after 19 years. Met my current partner. I remember when we met, he was like, I want children. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, but I am 42. I was 42 at the time. So I've got 3 children. And it was kind of a bit of a non-negotiable. It was
Okay.
like, if we're gonna do this, you need to at least not be closed to the idea. So in my mind, I was like, right now, no, because
Yeah.
my kids, and it's mostly a protection for my own children. I felt it was a really selfish thing for me to be doing when they
Mm-hmm.
were just kind of navigating a separation,
Mm-hmm.
after their mum and dad had been together for so long. But I did say, look, I'm not completely closed, but right now, no way. Let's just be together for a year or two. Let's see where it goes. And I reckon we're going to know whether we're working and we're going to want a baby or not, you know.
Yeah.
So it was nearing the end of last year where I was starting to go, okay, I think I can entertain. And the kids adore him, like love him to
Beautiful.
bits. So I've got the kids 50% of the time.
Yeah.
So it's 50-50 between me and my ex-husband. He's wonderful with them. Like, he's 7 years younger than me, actually. So I never had children and has taken on these kids that he, you know, this is probably a really challenging time too, you know, teenage years.
Exactly. Well, like I was saying before, you took on the role of stepmom with your ex-husband's kids. Well, he took on the role of stepdad with your kids. You know,
that's
3
right.
of them and teenage years, and he got a taste of fatherhood through them, in a sense.
Through early, and I'm surprised he's still here. Sometimes I'm like, whoa, you put up with a lot there, but my kids are great. I've got great kids, so that's obviously very helpful as well. And the kids are amazing. You know, despite the youngest going through some challenges, she's she's 13. She's trying to figure out who she is. It's normal stuff, right? So end of last year, I said, look, you know what? Yep, I reckon, we were in love, and I was like thinking I could do this, and I would like to give you this, for us together as well, not just give it to him, but I would like, I loved him enough to say, I would love for you, to be able to give you that gift of being a dad as well. I was conscious of that. I was getting older. I was 43 at the end of last year, and I just said, look, I don't want to have a baby when I'm 45, or maybe let's cut it off at 45. We had planned to fall pregnant this time now.
Oh, okay.
I said, I want to go to Africa. There's things I want to do. So I was getting quotes to go to Africa in June or May, so we could come back and try in June. Okay. And then in October last year, I was doing some reading, and I was going to the doctor to do some tests because my period was still regular, but instead of 28 days, it was like 24 days. It had changed. So I just wanted to make sure everything was okay because of my age. And I had said to him, listen, I've been reading, all of this research is saying that at my age, we have a 3% chance of falling pregnant spontaneously every month. It was really low. So I was like, let's just relax because I don't think it's going to happen. I might even probably need some help, through whatever we need to be doing, IVF or whatever. And then 2 weeks later, I fell pregnant. So I was like,
beautiful.
Maybe I'm clearly not in the norm. So, and it's been the easiest pregnancy I've had. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
That
so bizarre.
Is insane.
No bleeding, no complications. Everything's fine. It's been just textbook.
And see, that's where, like, I usually don't highlight my guest's age, but because you are 44, and being over 40 seems to scare everyone when it comes to a woman having a baby. It's a number. We know it's a number. So there are women who are in their 20s trying to conceive, and they just can't conceive for some reason. And
or not healthy, or not looking after themselves. Who
exactly. And I mean, in your case, you said, well, statistically, I have a 3% chance. Well, apparently, that's a pretty good chance for you to fall pregnant. There you go. Good, perfect. And and the most important thing is it's not even the percentage chance of falling pregnant. Is you felt ready to have a newborn, because you know what newborn is like. You know the demand. That it involves, it's draining, to start with. And, at 44, you're like, let's have a baby. I don't see a problem with that. That's age is a number. I just want to highlight that.
Oh, look, I totally agree. And that's a big reason why, obviously we touch base at the beginning was my experience now being older, initially going through the shared care system, because I didn't expect to fall pregnant so quickly, so I didn't change my cover on my private health. So I was going, okay, well, I'll just have to go public. Started going to shared care to a lovely female GP, like female clinic. Look, they're really lovely, but every single appointment I went to, I would hear, because of your age,
Oh,
and it was every single appointment, and I kept saying, well, hold on, I felt pregnant in 2 weeks. I'm a fitness instructor. Genetically, I feel like I'm doing pretty well.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
feel younger than my age.
yeah,
I think I look younger than my age. So you would hope that the inside replicates maybe a little bit of the
yeah.
outside. I don't know,
Mm.
unless I'm being delusional. But like I just was like, I don't feel like I fit
Yeah, yeah,
within the norm,
yeah, yeah.
but you keep telling me that I'm
Mm.
defective in some
Mm.
way. And I remember going to the obstetrician because they wanted to see me because I was going through shared care, saw the midwife. She's like, because of your age,
Oh,
we want you to go see the obstetrician in the hospital. I
oh,
was like, okay. So I went and saw her. And again, no bleeding, no
yeah.
complications.
Hmm.
NIPT had come back, no problem.
Yeah.
So no further investigation needed. Scans were perfect. She said, oh, look, we'll probably induce you at 40 weeks. And I said, why?
What?
And she said, oh, well, because, as we get older, our vascular system tends to slow down. And I was like, okay. And I think at the time I was like, oh, okay, well, can we negotiate a sweep? Because it's a public system too.
Yeah.
They usually just do a sweep at 39 weeks. I said, can we negotiate a sweep earlier then to
Hmm.
see if I can try and go into labour so you don't induce me? I've had an induction before. I don't want to go through that again. I really don't want to force this baby out. And she was reluctant, but agreed. Then I went back again. She wanted to see me again. And in between those appointments, my partner and I'd purchased, so the difference between when I had my last child and now, I'm a psychologist now. So now I understand how our hormones work, what
Yeah.
oxytocin is, what endorphins are, what initiates or drives the release of oxytocin, what drives and releases endorphins and adrenaline and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you made the point before, with the access to information now is insane compared to when I had the other kids. So I was starting to read all this stuff going, hold on, I don't think I want an induction. Oh, I don't,
Yeah.
there's women in their 40s having babies all the time now. Like, why is this still a discussion? And I'd purchased an online, and I can't recommend it enough actually for those also on a budget, because I was wanting to do all these different courses. Like, wow, it's like $700 or something for the hypnobirthing course here. So we bought the online modules from the Positive Birth Co. And so we started watching these videos in between the two appointments, obstetrician appointments. And when I got back to see her the second time, I said, you know what? Actually, I don't want to be induced. And she was really unhappy about that. She pushed back. She again reminded me about my age.
Oh, yeah.
Again reminded me that my vascular system will slow down. She used scare tactics, like, we try and prevent stillbirth. And I kind of was like, I don't think I want to do it here. And at the time, I remember speaking to my partner and I had said to him, I kind of mentioned home birth. I actually didn't know I could do it. I didn't have the confidence actually at the beginning. I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. But I did kind of out loud say, what would you think about a home birth? And he was like, no, you're going to hospital, you're high risk. Because that's what he was told, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what they were telling us,
Yes.
And his first baby as well. And I obviously haven't never had a baby at 44. So I'm hearing what they're telling me, but then I'm reading something different. And then I'm going, oh, wait, hold on a second. Never questioned the medical professionals in the past. So this was different for me to be questioning what they're telling me. And, he was quite fearful of birth, actually. He even would say to me, I don't know if I can go down that end when you're giving birth. I'm going to have to stay up here. He was scared, which I think a lot of guys are. But we ended up watching this hypnobirthing course, modules from beginning to end. By the time we got to the end, he's like, let's do it. We're doing it at home. You're not getting induced. You're not going to hospital.
Beautiful.
We're doing it here. Like and just like a complete, and now he's like, so the midwife today, I want to catch the baby.
That's great.
It's just completely different. Just how powerful the education can be.
Exactly.
In reducing that fear and just having knowledge. Exactly. It has just been the most amazing thing for the both of us, actually. So,
and again, that access to information which you didn't have back then. You couldn't have, done hypnobirthing 20 years ago, because I don't think
I don't even think it was a thing.
And so, the access to information now, and the fact that you can see that birth can be done differently. So some women, they want to go through the hospital. that's fine. If you
yeah,
you need to birth
absolutely.
where you feel
Yeah.
safe. If you feel
Yeah.
safe in a hospital, go to the hospital. That is great. If they are just like in your situation where it's like you're just being pushed back at 20 weeks, you're being told you'll be induced in 20 weeks just
Mhm.
because of your age. It's
Just
like, well,
just in case.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's
Just
like,
in
but
case.
but you don't have any clinical signs, except for my age, which I can't
Yeah.
change. You don't have
Yeah.
any clinical signs that the baby needs an induction in
No.
20 weeks. You're just saying it
No.
based on a number to help prevent a stillbirth, which is a statistic because they obviously can't prevent stillbirth. It's really hard to. They're trying to prevent a statistic basically from happening by creating a cascade of intervention. Doesn't make any
And
sense.
actually extra work for them, because you're in the
Yep.
public system, and I understand funding, and
Yep.
it would mean they'd have to really monitor me.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a sudden decision for us. As we got more
Yeah,
and
yeah.
more information, it was, I'm going to push back on this induction,
Yeah, yeah.
and then it
Mm-hmm.
was actually, I'm going to say no to this induction, and it was still going to the
Yep.
hospital. It was just like, I'm not, and then it was, starting to get a little bit sick of. And actually,
Yep.
my partner Lawrence was starting to get a little bit anxious about the whole, because we did, teaching us and that we have a right to question what's being done at the hospital, and
Yep.
so he kind of almost prepared himself for a bit of a fight. When it
Yeah.
was time for labour, he was like, "I'm responsible for being your advocate now."
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So we started kind of, like it was just this kind of progressive change in mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I've got no problem. Like I do, we've got friends who are who've had really traumatic births actually,
Mm-hmm.
but if they weren't in hospital, it could have been dire. There has
Yeah.
been absolutely situations where the hospital was the best place for them. And I've got no problem going to the hospital actually in this birth. If I'm told that I need to go, I'll
Yeah,
go.
yeah. True. Yeah, yeah.
But it was more around my confidence slowly changing to go, actually, I birthed 3 babies.
Mm-hmm.
My only
True.
fear really is the pain and not having the access to the epidural. But I feel like I've got more knowledge, which means I've got a stronger mindset this time.
Yeah.
I got to 8 centimeters last time. I
You
reckon I
did.
can get through this time.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah. Yeah.
I got sick of being weighed. I got sick of being told about my age. I got sick of being scared all the
Yeah.
time. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
this is my last ever baby. This is not how I want to do this.
Yeah.
So,
And we know that the problem with the hospital is they can't really cater for a personalized, not experience, but they have pretty strict rules and guidelines, right? And so basically what
well,
they
they
look
have
at
to, right?
yeah, exactly, that's right.
Yeah.
And so what they look at in your case is they see your age, and that is the biggest red flag for them. Not that it's a
Yeah.
flag, but they see it as that's
But
what
they
deems you
see
high
it as
risk.
risk. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas when you go through a continuity of care model, which can be through the public system,
The
or
hospital.
it can
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
or it can be through a private midwife, that's
Yeah.
when they can see that for Michelle, who is 44 indeed, she's not showing any signs that her pregnancy is complicated.
High
There is no
risk. Yeah.
complication. There is actually no risks there, and you've had 3 previous births, so therefore they can also see how your births have gone, how your pregnancies have gone, and therefore they can then cater and go, well, yes, I know she's 44, but based on her history from looking at the individual, I can see that she will probably be fine to go into spontaneous labor,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
reassess as needed, rather than saying,
Yes.
okay, you're 44, here is the guidelines, you will be induced at 40 weeks. And that's very rigid when you're 20 weeks.
Yeah. Because who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
And I did, the original plan was to just say, I'm not doing the induction. I would like you to monitor me from 40 weeks.
Yep.
And they would have had to have done that.
Yep.
But
Definitely.
I know that I probably also would have faced a bit of an uphill battle with them. There would have been some disgruntledness and annoyance. And so we kind of just went, nah, at 26 weeks, I think we made the decision. There was a midwife that I had in mind that I really wanted, which was Jo Hunter here in Sydney. She actually produced Birth Time, the documentary Birth Time. And I was trying to get in contact with Jo at 28 weeks. So I knew it was late. I thought, there's no way I'm getting this midwife at 28 weeks pregnant. Like, this is crazy. She'd actually helped assist the delivery of my niece. So it was also, something that I was like, I would really love her. Rang a couple of other midwives who are also full. Like, it's late. I feel like the trend is changing, and home births are becoming now again more supported and more common, so that the private midwives, because there's not many of them, are getting really busy. And at the time we decided to book like a birth photographer. I know that sounds weird, but she's just beautiful. Like, these photos are just gorgeous. She doesn't take pictures of it's like tasteful memory pictures.
Yeah, of course.
And she's a practicing midwife as well. So she also got in touch with Jo. I got in touch with Jo. I think my sister-in-law got in touch with Jo. And then I ended up speaking to another midwife who was really lovely as well, called Chantel, in the Blue Mountains. And we were just about to go with her. And then Jo called me the next day and said, actually, I can take you on. So I was like, okay.
Wow.
And so I've had her now since 28 weeks, and she came to the house for the first time today, met my kids, dropped off the birth pool, so it's getting very, very real now. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. Wow. I love the way you found a private midwife at 28 weeks. As you said, it's not easy, even when you're, like in your first trimester. It can be really hard to get a private midwife because there's so far and few in between, because it's so hard for them to be a private practicing midwife.
Or because there really is more home births, I think, now that people realise, and they just can't be. You can only take on so many pregnant women a month, and they also need to sleep at some stage. So there was another lady I really loved called Robin too, and she was great, because I rang her and I said, I can't get in touch with Jo, because she wasn't free either. And she said, look, I saw Jo the other day, just keep going, keep trying. She goes, we like a bit of a sob story. so I was like, Jo, I'm getting told I'm old. This is my last baby. I really want to do this at home. So maybe it worked.
Oh, beautiful. You've kind of alluded to it, but so what are you doing differently this time to prepare yourself for birthing at home with potentially no epidural, no pain relief, even though,
no pain relief.
You can do it, but you've obviously had epidurals for your last 3. You've done hypnobirthing. That's amazing. What else are you doing to prepare yourself?
So we practice a lot of those techniques, like, every day. So since like the 20-week mark, we've been, doing affirmations and and I know how the brain works just through my work. So lots of mindfulness to kind of rewire the brain a little bit, and just focus on reducing fear. So for me, my fear was, can I get through transition? Can I get through that stage? Because I couldn't before. That's my main fear. I don't have any other fears really. For Lawrence, it was kind of more so the fear of birth, like seeing blood and me in pain. And so we have been watching over the many weeks, nearly like several times a week, we would watch a positive home birth video, which has actually probably been the catalyst for Lawrence's complete about turn and zero fear of birth now. Was just seeing that birth can actually be really lovely, and it's not what you see on TV and in movies and Exactly. And for me, yes, the only kind of thing that gets me a little anxious is the idea of pain, because I've always had the ability to relieve that when I wanted. But my mantra this time, and I think it's working, is it's a moment in time. Like, I can get through this. I just have to focus on this 1 minute contraction at a time. And when I watch those videos, my main focus is watching the women push in obvious pain, but then the minute that baby's born, like literally the second that baby's born, their face and the endorphins and the adrenaline, it's just a reminder that pain is not there forever. It goes, so that for me, like, it's just, that's what's getting me through each time I have a little bit of a, it's like, this is not forever. It'll just, it'll be a moment and it'll go and it'll never come back. So, you know, you're going to be okay. You know, so that's, hopefully I can be convinced of that during transition time. So.
Yeah, but I mean, this time around you've got Lawrence, and he's going to be the best advocate because he's been, you know, he's done the hypnobirthing with you. He's watched the birth videos, and obviously your private midwife will be there. And you know, between the two of them, even if he goes, oh, I don't really know what to do now, you know, Joe will be there to go, you know, take a breath, you know, this is what you want to do, you know, and she will be able to remind Lawrence how to support you, or, you know, remind you of your affirmations as well, obviously. And that, and I think you'll probably find that because you're in a different environment, obviously your birth is going to unfold differently because you're in this safe place. You're in a place that you know. It will be on your own terms. There will not be any pressure, or, you know, obviously birth is unpredictable and you know, things could happen. But in the case of your labour starting spontaneously, just the environment
it's
being
the
different.
best environment, isn't it? Yeah, to really get that the oxytocin going and and get it to progress. Yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
And the people I have here, I know. You know, I'm not going to have people coming in that I've never met before.
There's no strangers in the room. There's no one
asking to do internals or
exactly. Well, what about your kids? Are they going to be at the birth?
Potentially, they're going to be
amazing.
Yeah, originally they said no. Then my eldest daughter was like, her boyfriend was like, Isabella, you've got to do this. This is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. And she's great. You know, she wants babies and she's just so excited. 20 years, you know, she's going to be like an auntie. So she was like, yep. So, and then I've been working on the other two, and they were here for the midwife for Joe's appointment today. And Joe said, are you guys going to be there? And they were like, yep. Okay. Apparently they're going to be here. So
cool. That is so good.
Yeah, which is great. Look, they will have the choice to come up with their bedrooms or upstairs. If they feel like that they can't, you know, they don't want to be here in the lounge room, they can go upstairs, but they'll be present in the house. Yeah,
beautiful. And I think that's, you know, the birth education you're giving them just by allowing them to see that a birth doesn't have to take place in a hospital, and it can be a very calm and relaxed experience, even if you're in pain and you're riding through contractions and it's not an easy time. But they can see that, you know, Joe will probably be stepping back and she won't be interfering. You know, she will intervene if there is a need for her to intervene, but otherwise she'll be supporting you however ways that looks, in a manner that's, you know, calm, relaxed, no emergency, no rushing of people, you know.
No.
Just different.
And that's kind of really what I wanted to, you know, and I'm a big believer of, you know, just that birth trauma. Not only did I go through that birth trauma, but Isabella did too, you know, when she was going through all of that and not breathing and getting all these tests and getting treated for GBS. And I would like to help heal that experience for her. I mean, I don't know how many people believe in that, but we know through research, through psychology research, that trauma can start in the womb. So, you know, I think it's going to be a really healing experience, not just for me, but for her too, because she went through that, not just me. She was unwell. She was nearly died, you know. So it would be really lovely to have her heal a little bit from that experience as well. Yeah.
Oh, of course. So you've obviously been talking about birth with your children, right? So I guess they're familiar with the process, right? They obviously know how, you know, a baby is made and where it comes from.
Yes,
but I'm guessing the way you're talking about the birth preparation and how you envision your birth, you know, I'm guessing that's also helping them to see it in a different way, right? Because as you said, you know, what we see in the movies is not the reality. That's not what it is. That's not what birth is, but that's what we see. So therefore we think, well, that's how it is when I have, you know, children. And it's not.
Yeah, it's
And
going to
that's a
be this
shock.
awful experience.
Yeah.
The other two, like the eldest he sees it, but she's 20.
Yeah.
My 17-year-old, he's a boy as well, so it's different for him. Like I feel
Yeah,
like
true.
he's, and actually I think the main challenge for him will be seeing me in pain. He's boys and their mums. It's
That's right.
it's a thing, but he's becoming more and more kind of resistant. My youngest is not very maternal. Says she doesn't want kids. She's going to be the toughest one, and also because she's disgruntled. But I really for me, it's like for her, there's no telling her in advance. I think she's just got to go through it and experience it for herself. And I really feel like once this baby's born, she will feel so much love for it that all of that apprehension or anxiety will go. She'll be fine. Yeah, she'll realize that there's enough love to go around for everybody. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it's hard to, you can say that as many times as you want to her beforehand until she's in it and she realizes that your love doesn't divide, it duplicates. It's an unknown concept until then. So that's how it is.
Agree.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And the last thing I wanted to touch on is, so after the birth, are you planning to breastfeed, and have you started to maybe investigate, whether your implants may or may not have an impact on your breastfeeding supply, if you wish to, obviously?
So after Scarlett, my third, after I stopped breastfeeding her, I had a third surgery. And they moved from in front of the muscle to behind the muscle. So it's been 12 years since I've had that surgery. And what I've been reading is that the longer between surgeries, the better. So more than 5 years drastically increases your chances of good milk supply. The problem with my implants, the original two, were the incision points. So they were around the nipple rather than underneath. So that's the worst place you can go when it comes to breastfeeding, is going through the nipple, because it cuts off the nerves that are attached to your milk ducts. I still have numbness there. It's been 12 years, but I feel like I have less numbness than I did with the others. So I am trying to be optimistic because I wouldn't mind breastfeeding, but I'm also a bit of a believer of if it becomes so stressful and they're losing weight, like I'm kind of just, I want to be able to enjoy my baby, especially the last baby. So I'm also very open to, I'm going to try this, but if it gets to the point where it's affecting me enjoying this time with he or she, then it's going to the bottle and that's it. So, but I've got a pump. I've got all the T's. I'm optimistic that the 12 years has been long enough, and if I get attachment going well from the beginning, and I might consider the Matilium if I have to, but I'll do what I think I need to do, but and I've got Joe's support. So Joe comes and sees me every second day for a week postnatally, and then every week for 6 weeks. So it's, you get a lot of support over that 6 week period. I would really love to. So I'm going to try, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
Perfect. That's a great mindset, and as you would know as a psychologist, it's all about the mindset, being open and just seeing how you go, because as you said, the worst thing is if breastfeeding is getting in the way of your mental health, then it's just not worth it.
It's just not worth it for me. No, it's not. It's like, as long as I get to the point where as long as my baby is fed, and it can't come from me, then it can't come from me, So,
No, that's right. As a psychologist, are you a bit more wary of, postnatal depression and postnatal anxiety and other mental health challenges that come with, early postpartum?
Yes. I had postnatal with Scarlett. I had, and I think this less is known about prenatal depression as well. So I had prenatal depression when I was pregnant with Cooper. Look, I think a lot of the postnatal with Scarlett was because I'd moved back to Australia 32 weeks pregnant. Didn't have the supports and the friends that I'd had for 32 weeks around, was very lonely. So I think it was probably more situational than traditional postpartum depression. I think the benefit for me having that knowledge is that I'll get intervention quite early, because
Yeah.
I'll be like, okay, this is not okay, this is not good,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
So, and also this whole experience, you know, feeling really rather privileged that I can have a baby at my age. I know that
Yeah.
I shouldn't be saying that, but you know, from
No.
the dialogue that we get, I actually do feel really privileged that I'm able
Mm.
to. I have been lucky to be to have fallen pregnant as easily as I have and have you know, a healthy pregnancy at my age, and it's made me want to kind of move into this area now. I've become so
Yeah.
passionate about educating women, and I specialize in trauma in my private practice, both complex and acute trauma. I think I'm going to add birth trauma to my
Yeah.
skill set and help
Mm-hmm.
support women who've gone through some birth trauma, and just help change the dialogue a little bit around age and
Beautiful.
just the language used in birth and things
Exactly.
like that.
Got actually a few episodes coming up about like the language we use around birthing and
Yeah,
how, and just as you said, reframing the dialogue and just seeing birthing and pregnancy through a different perspective of, moving away a bit from that medicalized, the
yeah,
doctors know better than me, I need intervention, I need help to birth and so on, because
yeah,
as you said, it's not, it can be the case, and that's right, the hospital has a time, it has a place, some people are high risks for a reason,
mm,
but I feel like the high risk category sometimes applies to people who don't necessarily have criteria for high risk other than age, for example.
yeah. Other than the
Um,
norm, and not,
yeah,
you know, not, and we are not the norm. We are
yeah,
very individual. So yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly, and
yeah,
and that's the problem with the hospital system is it's can't cater for individuals. It puts you in a box. It labels you,
yeah.
and you put in a box basically, and that's how
Mm.
you catered for. So at
Well,
least
they
with
don't have that. They don't
Joe,
have the manpower, really, do
no,
they, to manage it either? Like, there is a limit to how much they can do until they get more staff. But it would be
exactly.
good. I mean, this is great what you're doing. It would be good just to even just start with how you talk to women.
Yep,
That would be really great.
exactly.
And
No,
men,
that's right.
like, you know, even my partner, you know, understanding how important it is that they are involved and they are
Yeah,
spoken to as well. Like, it's not
yeah,
just about the
of
woman.
course.
So, you know, that
Yeah,
they
no,
are
that's
fully
right.
involved, that they're getting given information, that they're,
Yeah.
you know, they're going through this too. Just because it's
Mm.
not happening to their body doesn't mean that they don't need to know what's happening, you know? So,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
That's right. There's a lot of narrative that needs to change, and it starts with, what we're doing here, which is, reflecting and telling about, telling your story is going to help
yeah,
women by going, well, this is what happened, for me. And then for this, last baby, based on the information available and what happened in my life, this is how I'm
yeah,
going through it now.
yeah.
And this is, hopefully the outcome. And I hope you have your dream home birth, or I hope
Thank
the
you.
birth that you have is positive, whichever way that
Yeah,
looks, because we know it can look different. Positive can be different things, but
yeah,
I hope
yeah,
it's as positive as it can be for you and Lawrence and your kids, obviously.
yeah,
And
yeah,
37 weeks. Wow. Could be
yeah.
any time now.
I know, baby's engaged apparently, so we'll see. I've predicted next week. I've predicted next Tuesday. Let's see if I'm right.
You've predicted next week. Okay, that's fairly
Yeah,
early. Wow.
30,
Are
38
you
weeks and one day I'll be. Yeah, that's
okay?
it, and it's measuring at 38 weeks today, so it's good.
There you
It's
go.
kind of jumped up a bit, and then it's getting prepared. So let's see.
Are you ready for baby to arrive next week or
I'm
tomorrow?
on maternity leave this week, so I'll be ready. I
Good.
wanted this week at least. Poor Lawrence
Yep.
doesn't finish work until Monday next week, so he's not going to have a lot of
Oh.
time to be ready. But he'll be fine. Yeah, he'll be
Yeah.
fine.
Oh, I
Yeah,
wish you both all the best, and I
thank
cannot
you.
wait. Please let me know how you go. I mean, when
I
you've got
will.
time.
I will. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
No worries.
and
That would
I'd
be
love for
great.
you to come back, obviously, and tell your story when you're ready. Obviously, it's not urgent in any
After
sense.
baby. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
obviously after baby, when you've adapted to,
Yeah,
this new newborn life, and having four kids and managing that, obviously, and
yeah. No, I'd really
yeah,
love that. That would be really nice.
Thank you so much for your time, Michelle. I've loved our conversation. It's been great, and it's super empowering to hear, where you've come from and where you're going. It's beautiful. I just can't wait to hear how your home birth goes and discover if it's a baby boy or baby girl.
Yeah, I know, me too. No, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's really nice to, just start that open dialogue and change the narrative a little bit. And you're doing that. So that's really lovely. So thank you.
Yeah, but it's thanks to women like you, because otherwise I wouldn't have any stories to share. There's only so many I can share.
Well, it's both of us.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to get notified of when a new episode comes out, please subscribe to this show on your podcast listening platform. Also, I would really appreciate it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcast or share this episode so that other moms can find it. If you would like to tell your own pregnancy, birth, or parenting story, please head to the show notes and you will find a form there to get in touch with me. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I will be with you again next week for a new episode.